There's this thing I do now. I calculate before I speak. I'll pause, measure the words, the tone, the possible ripple effects. I've gotten so good at it, people just think I'm mysterious, or maybe cold, or that I just don't like them. But here's the thing. I know exactly when I'm doing it, and I know exactly why. It wasn't always like this. I used to be the life of the party, always in the middle of a crowd. Then one accident I can barely remember changed everything. Now people don't see that outgoing kid anymore. They see a stranger and they call me mysterious. It's funny, the things you don't appreciate until they're gone. For me, it was the quiet. Not literal silence, but the quiet inside my head. The absence of that constant humming commentary. Before, there was no commentary, there was just life. I remember being 8 or 9 and friends would just show up at our house. No planning, no texting, just a revolving front door. We'd play tag until the street lights flickered on and a mom's voice would call out from a distant porch. I was the one organizing the games, making up the rules, yelling to be the seeker first. And I never once wondered if I was being too loud, too much, or not enough. I just was. That was me, the kid who'd borrow your favorite toy and forget to give it back. Not because I was a jerk, but because I was already on to the next adventure. I was the first to shoot my hand up in class, and even the first to volunteer for the school play. I didn't crave attention, I just didn't know how to exist without jumping in. The world felt like a conversation, and I was always ready to talk back. Friendship was effortless. It was just an assumption. You sat next to someone, shared your snacks, and bam, you were friends. There was no subtext to analyze, no hidden meaning in a look. A laugh was a laugh, a fight was a fight, and it was over in 5 minutes. I lived out loud. My joy was loud, my frustration was loud, my presence was loud. I moved through the world with this unearned confidence that I was exactly where I was meant to be and that people were happy to have me. I had no idea how rare that feeling was. I didn't know it was something you could lose. I have almost zero memory of the accident itself. It's a blank spot in my story, a chapter ripped out, leaving just the torn edges. Everything I know is pieced together from hushed adult conversations, my parents' haunted faces, and the cold, detached language of medical reports. A near drowning. That's the term they use. It sounds so gentle, doesn't it? Like you just dipped your toe over a line and stepped back. But it's not like that. It's violent. It's a severance. One moment you're breathing air, the next your body is fighting for an element it can't use. I don't remember going under. I don't remember the panic or the struggle. My first real memory is waking up to a mind full of static. It was like a TV tuned to a dead channel, buzzing with sounds and images that weren't mine. The lights were too bright, the beeping machines were a constant assault, and my parents' faces, carved with terror I couldn't understand, felt like they belonged to strangers. My injured brain tried to fill in the blanks. It invented things, hallucinations. I have these ghost memories of raging at my father for something he never did. I remember seeing spiders crawling on the ceiling so vividly I can still feel the phantom itch on my skin. I can't separate what was real from what my mind made up. And that feeling, that deep, profound uncertainty about your own mind, that stayed with me long after any physical injury. Imagine waking up and not being sure if you screamed something awful at your mother or if your brain just created the scene. Imagine that seed of mistrust in your own perception spreading to everything, to conversations, to friendships, to the simple act of being around people. The lack of oxygen can cause brain damage, but the psychological trauma, that feeling of your own mind turning on you, creates a totally different kind of injury, one nobody else can see. The doctors talked about hypoxia and respiratory distress. They called my survival a miracle. My parents cried with relief, but I felt like a ghost. I had survived, but the person who went into that water didn't feel like the person who came out. Something was left behind in the deep, quiet dark, and something new, something cautious and watchful had taken its place. When I finally went back to school, something had fundamentally shifted. Not in the world, but in me. It was like a software update had been installed in my brain without my permission, and the user interface was completely new. I started noticing things I'd never seen before. The tiny shift in someone's eyes when I spoke, the slight hesitation in their voice, the huge unspoken subtext hanging in the air. Reading the room became an obsession. It wasn't a place to just exist anymore. It was a complex system of social codes I had to decipher. That hypervigilance, that constant analysis, it made me quiet. Not because I didn't want to talk, but because I was too busy listening, processing, and calculating. My mind was no longer a participant. It was a full-time analyst, tracking every single move. I'd built an entire labyrinth of social rules that only I could see, and I was trapped in it. To everyone else, I just seemed different. The loud kid was gone, replaced by this quiet, watchful observer. Teachers who used to praise my participation now asked if everything was okay at home. Friends who were used to me leading the charge just drifted away, confused by my silence. The word they settled on was mysterious. I'd hear them whisper it. He's so mysterious now. They didn't mean it as a compliment. They meant it as a label for something they no longer understood. They saw it as a choice, a new persona I was trying on. They couldn't see the frantic, desperate effort happening just beneath the surface. But here's the interesting part, the part that took me years to figure out. This new way of being wasn't a total shutdown. It was a reallocation of energy. With my cousins, with the friends who knew me from before, that internal voice would take a coffee break. I was loud again. I was silly. I was the one organizing the games just like when I was a kid. The difference is, now I'm aware of the shift. That awareness was the turning point. I realized I hadn't become a different person. I'd become a person with agency over my social energy. It wasn't that I was broken. The accident, the trauma, had installed a filter. It forced me to be intentional. And being selective isn't the same as being closed off. It's a form of self-preservation that over time started to feel like a strength. The people who were worth turning off the analyst for, they were the ones who truly mattered. I used to think there was something deeply wrong with me, that I'd lost a fundamental part of myself in that water. But I see it differently now. I didn't lose my ability to connect. I just became more intentional about it. I learned that being mysterious isn't a flaw. It's just what happens when you're paying attention to others and, more importantly, to yourself. My outgoing self didn't die. He just learned that his energy is a finite, precious resource, and now he gets to choose who he shares it with. And maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe the people worth knowing are the ones who stick around long enough to see past the mystery, long enough for that voice in my head to finally quiet down. Thank you for listening to my story. If any of this resonated with you, if you've ever felt like you've changed in a way people don't understand, you can grab my free 3-day workbook to take small, intentional steps towards quieter growth. I'd love to hear about your experience in the comments. It's good to know you're not the only one. And if you'd like to hear more stories and insights like this, consider subscribing to the channel. See you on the next video.